2:42 a.m. in the sterile glow of St. Mary's Hospital. The hallway reeked of sharp antiseptic mixed with the faint, underlying tang of illness and unspoken fears. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like distant insects, casting harsh shadows on the linoleum floors that seemed to stretch endlessly. Daniel Hayes slumped in a hard plastic chair, his eyes bloodshot from 36 hours without sleep. 2 jobs, mechanic by day, delivery driver by night, and endless overtime shifts had left him hollowed out, yet here he was, anchored by the one thing that mattered most, his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Inside the ICU room, Lily lay pale and fragile, her small chest heaving with uneven breaths. Tubes snaked across her body, connected to machines that beeped in a relentless rhythm, monitoring her fight against the rare pneumonia that had struck without warning. Daniel had been by her side all evening, holding her hand, whispering stories to distract her from the pain. But now, a nurse with kind but weary eyes approached him. "Sir, you need to step outside for a bit. We're running some tests, and hospital policy requires family to wait in the corridor during procedures." Daniel's voice cracked, raw from exhaustion. "I'm her father. Please, I need to be with her. She gets scared without me." "I understand, Mr. Hayes," the nurse replied, her tone gentle yet unyielding. She glanced toward a nearby security guard, who shifted uncomfortably. "But rules are rules. It won't be long." His chest felt like it was caving in, a vice of helplessness squeezing tighter with every passing second. He nodded numbly, forcing himself to stand on legs that felt like lead. As he stepped into the corridor, the door clicked shut behind him, sealing him away from the one person who made his world make sense. The air out here was cooler, almost mocking in its detachment, while murmurs from other waiting families drifted like ghosts. A janitor mopped the floor nearby, his movements slow and methodical. Catching Daniel's eye, the man paused and offered a quiet nod. "Tough night, huh? Hang in there. Kids are tougher than we think." Daniel managed a faint smile, drawing a sliver of comfort from the stranger's words. But his mind raced back to that morning, when Lily had been more awake, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and trust. "Daddy," she'd whispered, her voice barely above the hum of the machines, "you always make things better. Remember the story about the rain lady? If I get better, can we help someone like her again?" He'd squeezed her hand, fighting back tears. "Of course, baby. We'll help lots of people. Just focus on getting strong." Her words had pierced him. How did she even remember that old tale he'd shared months ago? It was just a bedtime story to her, but to him, it was a real memory, one he'd never expected to resurface. The flashback hit him hard now, pulling him into the past. It had been a stormy afternoon 6 months earlier, rain pounding the city like an angry drumbeat. Daniel was rushing from his mechanic shift to pick up Lily from school, already late and stressed about the bills piling up at home. His beat-up truck splashed through puddles as he passed a grocery store parking lot. There, amid the downpour, an elderly woman with silver-streaked hair had slipped on the slick pavement, crumpling to the ground. Blood trickled from a gash on her forehead, mixing with the rain. People hurried by, umbrellas shielding them from the chaos, but no one stopped. Daniel cursed under his breath. He couldn't afford to miss another hour of work. His boss had already warned him about tardiness. But something pulled him over. He parked haphazardly, dashed out into the torrent, and knelt beside her. "Ma'am? Are you okay? Let me help." She'd looked up, dazed and shivering, her faded hospital bracelet glinting under the rain, perhaps a remnant from some old treatment. I think I hit my head," she murmured. Daniel called 911, then stayed, shielding her with his jacket as best he could. To calm her while they waited for the ambulance, he shared a silly story from his childhood, how he'd once rescued a stray cat from a puddle during a storm, only for it to scratch him in thanks. She chuckled weakly, her eyes softening. "You're a good man," she'd said. By the time paramedics arrived, he'd missed his entire shift, docking his pay further. He never gave it a second thought, just instinct, the kind of quiet decency his own parents had taught him. Back in the present, the hospital corridor felt even more oppressive. Daniel paced, his shoes squeaking on the floor. From a nearby room, he overheard a doctor's hushed phone call. "The girl's vitals are dipping again. We need to stabilize her soon, or we might have to intubate." His heart hammered. Was that about Lily? Panic clawed at him. In the waiting area, another family emerged from a room, faces etched with grief, carrying a small bundle of belongings as they left in tears. The sight hit like a gut punch. What if that was him soon? Then the billing officer appeared, clipboard in hand, her expression all business. "Mr. Hayes, your deposit still hasn't cleared. We need to discuss payment options." Daniel rubbed his temples. "I told you, I'll pay. I just need a few more hours, my next check comes tomorrow." "This isn't a charity, sir," she said, though not unkindly. "We have protocols." Around them, a few other waiting families glanced over. One man, holding his own child's hand, met Daniel's eyes and approached quietly. "Hey, I've been where you are. Coffee? It's on me. Hang in there, sometimes things turn around when you least expect." The small gesture pierced the fog of despair, a reminder that not everyone was indifferent. Daniel accepted the coffee, its warmth seeping into his cold hands. But the moment shattered when two security officers arrived, their radios crackling. "Sir, we're getting complaints about pacing. You need to step outside the building for a bit." "Please," Daniel begged, his voice breaking. "Just let me wait near her door. She's all I have." One officer placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Rules are rules. Come on." The cold night air slapped him as he stepped into the parking lot, the city lights blurring through unshed tears. He wandered aimlessly, guilt and fear churning like a storm inside. How had it come to this? Single parenting after his wife's accident 3 years ago, scraping by, always one crisis away from breaking. Every step echoed his failures, but also his resolve. He'd do anything for Lily. Unbeknownst to him, eyes had been watching from afar. The woman from that rainy day, now recovered and thriving, had recognized him earlier in the hallway. Touched by his past act, she'd slipped away to the administrative office. Instead of a direct payment, she donated anonymously to the hospital's pediatric emergency fund, a charity she'd supported for years, inspired by her own battles with illness, as hinted by that faded bracelet. But she added a personal flourish, a small, handwritten note to be placed in Lily's patient file, addressed to the father who stayed in the rain. Inside, the transaction processed swiftly. The billing officer's eyes widened at the alert, the Hayes balance cleared via the fund. A nurse rushed out into the night, spotting Daniel under a street lamp. "Mr. Hayes. You can come back in. Your account's been settled, you can see your daughter now." Daniel froze, disbelief washing over him. "What? How?" "Anonymous donor through our charity program," she said with a smile. "Happens more than you'd think." Back in the ICU, the machines beeped steadily as Lily stirred. Daniel took her hand, feeling the faint warmth of life pulsing through. "Daddy," she murmured, eyes fluttering open. "Is the rain lady here? I dreamed about her." He chuckled softly, though his mind reeled. As he adjusted her blanket, a small card slipped from the chart onto the bed, for the man who stayed in the rain, sharing stories in the storm. Pay it forward when you can. Kindness echoes. Recognition dawned like dawn breaking, the woman from the grocery lot. He glanced up, catching a glimpse of her silhouette in the hallway, slipping away unobtrusively. No fanfare, no thanks needed. Just a gentle ripple of reciprocity. Gratitude flooded him, mingled with relief. He held Lily tighter, whispering, "I'm here, baby. And yeah, maybe she is watching over us." The hospital staff noticed the shift too. Nurses exchanged subtle smiles, the janitor offered another nod as he passed. Even the security guard softened, one murmuring, "Glad it worked out." These unheralded acknowledgments wove a web of quiet support, proof that in a world of rigid rules and indifference, pockets of empathy endured. Morning light filtered through the blinds, casting golden hues on Lily's face. She smiled weakly, a fragile beam piercing the shadows. "Daddy, when I'm better, let's find someone to help." "Like you did." Daniel nodded, tucking the note into his pocket like a talisman. Life hadn't magically eased, bills loomed, work beckoned, but hope had reignited. He kissed her forehead, savoring the moment, a single tear catching the sunlight. Months passed, and Lily's milestones became triumphs, her first laugh post-recovery, tentative steps in physical therapy, rediscovering her curiosity about the world. Daniel returned to the hospital one day, not as a desperate father, but as a volunteer, sharing stories with other families in the waiting room. He never saw the woman again, but her act lingered, a reminder that decency, even at personal cost, creates unseen chains of good. In quiet evenings at home, as Lily played with her toys, Daniel would glance at the framed note on the wall. "See, baby," he'd say, "there are people who remember. And when we need it most, kindness finds its way back." She'd nod, her eyes bright. "Like an echo, Daddy?" Exactly like that. And in those words, their world felt a little less vast, a little more connected.